It's time for the Money Puzzle Podcast. With good conversations and realistic solutions to the money puzzles we all face every day. I'm your host, financial advisor, chartered financial consultant, and president of Edgen Insurance and Financial, Robert Edgen. Now let's get this show started. Hi there, hello, and welcome to the Money Puzzle Podcast. I am Robert Edgen, and I'll be your guide for the ride for the next few minutes. Each week, we look at a different piece of the money puzzle and practical ways to solve it so you can have the financial confidence you deserve and the future that you dream of. We've been working our way through the generations and the most important money moves that you should make in each decade of your life. And we got into the 60s last week. We covered items number 9, 8, 7, and 6 of the money moves to make, and today we're going to tackle numbers 5, 4, and 3. The 60s can be either a scary time or an exciting time for most folks. I've got this guy in my gym. He's retiring on May 2nd. Jerry is his name, and I know he's retiring on May 2nd because every day when I see him at the gym, he gives me the countdown on how many more days it will be until he retires. He actually started his countdown last November when he had 180 days to go. And then last time I saw him, which was a few days ago, he was down to 101 days, but he wants to make sure that I know he's taking his last 2 weeks off, so he's technically only got 88 more days until he retires. He's telling anyone and everyone who will listen to him about how excited he is for his retirement date, which as of today now is 86 days away. He's so excited because he's prepared. He's got a plan in place. He knows what his retirement is going to look like. He knows where his money is going to come from. He's ready and he's able, and so he's therefore excited. But I do talk to a lot of other people who are scared going into their 60s because they don't know if they can retire. They don't know what they'll do or how they'll pay for things, so they don't have anything to get excited for. And this, by the way, is exactly why a little bit of planning can be and is so important. This is the financial confidence that I'm always talking about. And more importantly, what that confidence does for you is it helps you get excited and be ready for things instead of fearful of things. I'm excited to get into this conversation. We've still got a lot of great things to get through before we get to our retirement age. But before we dive in, I do a lot of reading and research, and I come across different financial headlines that catch my eye. So let's take a minute and look at some news. Today's story comes from Reuters, and the headline reads, "Grumpy Cat and Lovelorn Whale are stars of 2019's Top Animal Stories." So Reuters just announced its Top Animal Stories and Top Animal Earners of 2019, and it's probably no surprise to see Grumpy Cat on the list of top earners. But what was surprising to me was that Grumpy Cat is still a top earner when when she actually died last year. Grumpy Cat actually died in 2019 on my birthday, May 14th. Sad, I know, but that has not slowed down the Grumpy Cat marketing machine, which has kept Grumpy Cat memes and t-shirts and greeting cards flying off the shelf and earning her owner a humongous pile of cash. An article on Heavy.com puts the cat's net worth at upwards of $100 million. The famous feline earned over $700,000 alone in 2018 just off of copyright infringement. Now, I, at home, have a dog that never smiles. She looks sad and she looks like she's depressed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. She's got those sad eyes and that droopy face. Even when I know she's having a good time, she looks like the saddest dog on earth. But she's never made me any money whatsoever. All she does is cost me money. So I'm actually going to post a few pics of my sad dog on this week's show page in case anyone out there wants to make her face into a meme and skyrocket both of us into fame and instant riches. And if you do help, I promise I will share in the profits. Here's the deal. You never know what people are going to latch onto and share. The internet is funny like that. All I know is that I give the owner of Grumpy Cat some mad props because they deserve it for jumping on that cat wagon and doing such a great job of promoting their sourpuss. It's sad that they died, but it's crazy that the cat's net worth is $100 million. So Grumpy Cat is obviously gone, but definitely not forgotten. Check out that story as well as the pics of my sad, droopy-faced dog on the show's webpage. That's it for today's news. Make sure you go and read that. Now, let's go ahead and get into today's hot topic of the day. All right, so we started off in our 60s last week. We got the conversation going with money moves number 9, 8, 7, and 6 that you need to make before you retire. As a quick reminder, number 9 was having a clear vision of your retirement and the idea that you should be transitioning into or to something, not just retiring from something. It's about having a purpose and a vision. Number 8 was about the importance of being debt-free or as close to it as possible for when you enter your retirement years. Number 7 was the importance of knowing your retirement numbers. How much money do you need each month? What kind of income sources do you have, etc.? And number 6 was about your paychecks and your playchecks, or really what that was. It was about having guaranteed income sources for your ongoing, regular, consistent retirement expenses and your retirement fund. Now, let's go ahead and keep counting down the list with number 5, which is to start thinking about your legacy. Now, I'm not talking about getting together with the kids and the grandkids and giving away all of your stuff or deciding who's going to get what. I'm talking about making a few important legal moves to help your transition into retirement and beyond to make sure that it goes the way that you want it to go for while you're alive and for after you've moved on. I'm talking about meeting with an attorney to set up your medical and your durable power of attorney and possibly a trust. So first off, everyone should have a medical power of attorney. We've talked about this before for different decades and for other things, but who's going to make the decisions for you, medical decisions, if you can't make them yourself? How do you feel about life support? How long do you want to be attached to machines? All of those questions are better off being answered by you while you can make those decisions. They're tough but important questions to ask and answer and have them documented. That way, if something happens to you, your kids aren't left making a decision and maybe fighting amongst themselves about how you would want things to be handled. Family fights and feuds definitely develop because kids have different ideas of how to take care of mom or dad when something goes wrong. So the easiest thing to do is just avoid the fights, avoid the feuds, the hurt, just by making these decisions and outlining them in advance so that everyone knows how you want things handled and what you want done. Then the second part of that meeting with an attorney is involving a trust. As far as a trust goes, it's a powerful tool that you can use to help control your money from the grave and leave the kind of legacy that you want to leave for your family. Now, leaving a legacy may or may not be important to you, but if it is, this is the right time to get it figured out while you're in your 60s. There's a few things to look at when it comes to your legacy. First off, what's your philosophy? How do you feel about it? Are you the kind who wants to set aside a big chunk of money for your heirs or give them what's left over? Or do you think they should fend for themselves and not get anything? That's a question for you and one that only you can answer. But here's something to think about. Do you think it will be easier or harder for the next generation to retire and live the life that you live and have the opportunities that you have had when it comes to retirement? Now, personally, I watch my kids and younger generations fight for jobs or take jobs that are part-time or go to work where they don't offer pensions or benefits. I see them switching between employers regularly. The bottom line is, me personally, I think that the next generation will have a harder time retiring than we do. Because of that, I want to help my family and my next generation to maybe have some of the opportunities and have some of the retirement resources that they might not get if I don't help them out. I also want to think about what's going to happen with medical care and medical costs in the future. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. But if we look at how fast insurance prices go up and how fast medical prices go up, if you follow that out over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, it's some pretty astronomical numbers just to get basic care here in America. And I want to make sure that my kids, that my grandkids, that my family and my heirs have some resources there. But that's a personal question to answer. Now, if you do want to take care of that next generation, there's a couple of things to consider. The first is, do you need a trust? A trust will dictate when and how your heirs receive money and other assets that you want them to have after you're done using them because you have died. A trust lets you set up income streams and payments and all sorts of things so that they're paid out in the way that you want them to be paid out. It could just be that everybody gets a big lump sum, and that's just fine. You've got money left over. It's divided between your two kids, let's say. But let's say that you do have two kids and one of them happens to be a financial whiz who watches every nickel, they count every dime, they only make excellent financial decisions. Congratulations on that child. But your other child, who happens to be a wonderful person and a wonderfully talented artist, they can barely spell dollar bill and they have no idea what a budget is. You might not want to give both of them a big lump sum payment because one might manage it very well and the other might spend it all on art supplies or do things that maybe don't get them the results that you're hoping they'll get from the money you leave them. So a trust is a great thing to use because that can make sure that your wishes are carried out after you've passed. You can dictate in a trust, hey, child number one gets their share in a lump sum, but child number two gets it in 5 years of monthly payments. You can dictate that if child number two is going to buy a house, they can get some money up front. Or if child number one gets married, then maybe there's some things set aside for grandkids. You can control all of those things right through a trust. So a trust is not needed to pass on things like life insurance. Anything that has a beneficiary designation happens outside of the trust. A trust is there to take care of those things that you leave inside of the trust. So you could have your life insurance, name your trust as a beneficiary. You could have your retirement money go into your trust when you die. And then from there, it can be controlled how you want it to. Okay, so that's the question and the conversation to have about a trust. And while you're considering your legacy, this is also the right time to ask, do you need some retirement life insurance? Now, hopefully by now your debts are all paid off, your income is all set up for you and your spouse or whoever relies on you. So maybe you don't need life insurance for those reasons. But you may still want some coverage for final expenses or, last minute attorney's fees or medical care, just to make sure that no one has to come up with money to take care of your funeral and other costs. A great type of life insurance policy to look at when you're in your 60s are policies that have guarantees built into them. Guaranteed payments for you, guaranteed payouts for your family, guaranteed coverage until whatever date of death happens to find you. This is not the time to look at term insurance, at least not when it comes to leaving a legacy or covering those final expenses. This is the time to look at permanent coverage, but you probably don't need a ton of it. We see a lot of clients, they just get $25,000 or $50,000 worth of coverage. They lock it in for the rest of their lives. That way it gives them the peace of mind that they won't be putting someone else on the hook or costing anyone any type of money when they leave this earth. So if that's important to you, this is the time to get it figured out while you still can, and hopefully while you still qualify and you can still afford the price, because as you get older, it becomes more and more expensive. Okay, so that's number 5, leaving a legacy. Number 4, how are you going to deal with health care? So here we're talking about Medicare if you're over age 65 or personally bought health insurance if you've not yet attained age 65. Now, one of the really big considerations of when to retire usually has to do with health insurance coverage. If you're not old enough to sign up for Medicare, how are you going to cover your medical expenses and your health insurance until you reach that age? Some jobs will offer some gap coverage, or maybe they'll let you stay on the group policy that you had at work, but unfortunately, most will not, which leaves you shopping around to find coverage. Here's what you need to know. Health insurance for people in their 60s is expensive. I was just visiting with a 63-year-old client just a few weeks ago, and she had recently retired. Her severance package gave her 6 months of health insurance, which was now running out. So now, at about 63 and a half, she has to go find a health insurance policy to get her to age 65. For an okay plan through the state of Colorado, it was going to cost her $1,250 per month, and she was going to need it for 15 months. Then she could file for Medicare, but between now and then, that's an extra $18,750 that she's going to have to either come up with or pull out of her retirement account in order to cover those costs. Health insurance and medical bills are a big deal, especially as we get older. So you need to pay attention and figure out, how am I going to cover myself? How am I going to be protected? If you are age 65 or reaching that age, you do need to sign up and file for Medicare just before your 65th birthday. Even if you're still working, and even if you have coverage through work, you still need to at least file and enroll. Otherwise, you'll find yourself maybe facing a penalty when it's actually time to start using Medicare coverage. It's kind of complicated, so we're not going to get into it now. I'm going to set up a separate show with a Medicare expert that I know who's going to go over all of it. But the bottom line is this. If you don't sign up when you're eligible, you could be subject up to a 10% penalty for each year that you were eligible and you didn't sign up. So then it's going to cost you more money each month and more money when you actually need to use the benefits. So you just need to make sure that you enroll and sign up when you can. Here's some crazy information. Medical costs for people over the age of 65 are high. We've talked about that, but I've got a couple of links that I'm putting in the show notes of studies that show that the total spending on medical costs after the age of 65 is somewhere around $230,000. So where is that going to come from? That is what people are actually spending, not what their health insurance is paying for them, not what Medicare is covering for them, but that's the average cost for medical for folks over the age of 65, all the way through the rest of their lives up until the day that they die. All right, I thought we were going to get through numbers 5, 4, and 3, but obviously we did not. I had a lot to say about numbers 5 and 4, so we'll pick back up next week with number 3, 2, and 1 for the most important money moves to make in your 60s. There are still some important things that we got to get done. The closer we get to number 1, the more important they get. So make sure that you come back next week and get the rest of the scoop. For now, that's it for this week. I hope you got some value from the show. If you did, please do me a favor. Share it with somebody who needs to hear it. If you've got somebody in their 60s who's starting to think about retirement, have them listen to last week's show, this week's show, next week's show. They will be much better prepared for reaching that retirement age. Make sure you go give us a review, give us a thumbs up on YouTube, like us on whatever app you're using to check out this podcast on. And if you have any questions about your own personal money puzzle, email those over to questions@yourmoneypuzzle.com. We'll make sure we get them answered. That's it for this week. Until next week, be safe, have fun, go do something to improve your money puzzle. Your future self will thank you for it. Talk to you soon.
Registered representative of and securities offered through Securities Management and Research, Inc., SMNR. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through BFC Planning, Inc. Edgen Insurance and Financial Services, Johnson Financial Services, SM&R, American National Family of Companies, and BFC Planning are independent entities. There are risks involved with investing which may include market fluctuation and possible loss of principal value. Particular investments may not be suitable for certain situations. Carefully consider the risks and possible consequences involved prior to making an investment decision. Our firm does not provide legal or tax advice. Be sure to consult with your own legal and tax advisors before taking any action that may have tax implications.